My name is Jessica Monroe. I am 31 years old, and I'm from Phoenix, Arizona. And trust me, what my own sister did to me wasn't just betrayal. It was a cruel test of my heart, my patience, and my limits. Have you ever had someone dump their biggest responsibility on you and vanish like you meant nothing? What would you do if your own sister ran away with her lover and left her seriously ill 10-year-old son at your doorstep like he was just luggage? Would you take him in, or would you slam the door shut? And what happens when you start realizing she didn't just run away for love? She ran away because she was hiding something darker. Something involving money, lies, and a plan that was never supposed to be discovered. Stay till the end because karma showed up, and it showed up loud. I still remember that morning like it was branded into my skin. It started like any other day, quiet, normal, almost boring. The kind of day where you don't expect your entire life to get ripped apart in the span of a few hours. I woke up early, made myself coffee, and sat near the window of my apartment while the Arizona sun slowly climbed into the sky. My phone buzzed once, then twice. But I ignored it because I thought it was just work emails. Then my doorbell rang, not a gentle ring. Not a polite ding-dong. It was aggressive, impatient, like whoever was outside was desperate or angry. I opened the door, and the second I saw him standing there, my heart dropped. It was my nephew, Ethan. He was only 10 years old, but he looked smaller than I remembered. Not just physically, emotionally too. His cheeks were pale, his eyes looked dull, and his shoulders were hunched like he was carrying something heavy, something no child should ever carry. And behind him was a small suitcase. Not a backpack, not a school bag, a suitcase, the kind you pack when you're not coming back. "Ethan," I said, confused. "Baby, what are you doing here?" He didn't answer right away. He just stared at the floor like he was afraid to look at me. Then he held out a folded piece of paper with shaky hands. My first thought was that something happened to my sister. Maybe she got into an accident, maybe she was sick, maybe she was in trouble. But when I unfolded the paper, my fingers instantly went cold. It wasn't written in panic. It wasn't written with love. It was written like a business transaction. "Jess, I need you to take Ethan for a while. I have to leave. Don't call me. I'll reach out when I can." That was it. No please, no I'm sorry, no I love you, no explanation, just 4 lines that felt like a slap across my face. At first, I actually laughed. A short, stunned laugh, like my brain couldn't process the cruelty of what I was reading. Then I looked at Ethan again. His lips were trembling. His eyes were watery, but he was trying so hard not to cry. And suddenly, my anger wasn't even about my sister anymore. It was about him, because whatever was happening, he knew. He knew she wasn't coming back. I crouched down in front of him. "Ethan, where's your mom?" He swallowed hard and whispered, "She said I'm staying with you now." The way he said it, not like a child repeating a fun plan, but like someone repeating a sentence they've been forced to memorize. I felt my stomach twist. "What do you mean she said you're staying with me? Did she go to work? Is she coming back later?" He shook his head. Then, in the smallest voice, he said something that still haunts me. "She told me not to call her anymore because she's starting a new life." I froze. Starting a new life? What kind of mother says that to a sick child? I stepped back, staring at the note again like maybe I read it wrong. But I didn't. My sister, Rachel, my own blood, had dumped her child at my door like he was an old coat she didn't want anymore. And then she vanished. I pulled Ethan inside immediately, shutting the door behind us like I was locking out the world. "Okay," I said softly, forcing my voice to stay calm. "Come sit. Let's talk." But when he walked into my apartment, I noticed something that made my heart drop even further. He wasn't just pale, he looked weak. His breathing was shallow, his movements slow, like every step took effort. And when he sat on my couch, he didn't bounce around like most kids. He just curled into himself. Like a child who had already learned disappointment too well. I reached for his suitcase, and when I lifted it, it was almost empty. It was light, too light. I opened it, expecting clothes, maybe medicine, maybe school supplies. But there were only 2 shirts, one pair of jeans, a small bottle of pills, and a worn-out stuffed dinosaur missing one eye. That was it. That's all she packed for her son. Like she wasn't sending him to his aunt's house, like she was abandoning him permanently. My hands started shaking. I tried calling Rachel immediately. Straight to voicemail. Again, straight to voicemail. I texted her. "Where are you? What is going on? Ethan is here." No response. I called again. Blocked. That's when I knew this wasn't some temporary emergency. This was planned. She didn't want to be found. And that realization made my blood boil. I paced my living room like a trapped animal, phone in hand, while Ethan sat silently on the couch watching me with scared eyes. Then he asked, barely audible, "Aunt Jess, am I in trouble?" That question broke something inside me. I stopped pacing and turned to him. "No, no, sweetheart, you are not in trouble. None of this is your fault." He nodded slowly, but his eyes didn't believe me. Because when your own mother abandons you, you start believing you must be the problem. I sat beside him and wrapped my arms around him, and he finally cracked. He started crying, not loud, not dramatic. Just quiet, painful sobs, like he was trying to hold it in, like he didn't want to be a burden even while his world was collapsing. I held him tighter, and in that moment I promised myself something. I didn't care what it cost. I didn't care how hard it would be. I was not going to let him feel unwanted ever again, but I also promised myself something else. If my sister thought she could disappear and leave me to clean up her mess, if she thought she could abandon her own sick child and walk away like she was free, then she didn't know me at all. Because I wasn't just going to raise her son, I was going to uncover exactly why she ran. And when I found out the truth, I was going to make sure she regretted the day she ever thought she could escape responsibility. That night, after Ethan fell asleep on my couch clutching his one-eyed dinosaur, I sat alone at my kitchen table. The house was quiet, but my mind was. Because deep down, I felt it, this wasn't just abandonment. This was the beginning of something bigger, something darker. And I had a feeling my sister didn't just run away with her lover. She ran away from consequences. And the scary part. She left her child behind like a shield, hoping I would be too distracted to look for her. But she was wrong, because the moment she left Ethan on my doorstep, she didn't just dump her child. She started a war, and I was about to finish it. The next morning, I woke up to the sound of coughing, not the normal little cough kids get when they sleep with their mouth open. This was deep, dry, painful, like it was tearing through Ethan's chest. I shot up from bed so fast my heart nearly jumped out of my body. I rushed to the living room, and there he was, curled up on the couch, his face sweaty, his lips slightly pale, and his small hands clutching his stomach like he was trying to hold himself together. "Ethan," I whispered, kneeling beside him. "Are you okay?" He nodded weakly, but it wasn't convincing. His forehead was hot, not just warm, hot. When I touched him, I knew immediately. He had a fever. And not a mild one. I grabbed the thermometer from my bathroom cabinet and checked. 103.6 degrees F. My stomach dropped. That wasn't rest and drink water fever. That was hospital fever. I panicked, but I forced myself to stay calm because the worst thing you can do around a sick child is show fear. They feel it instantly. I got him water, tried to help him sit up, and asked gently, "Sweetheart, have you been taking your medicine?" His eyes shifted away. That answer alone told me everything. Kids don't avoid eye contact when they're telling the truth. "What medicine did your mom give you?" I asked. He hesitated, then pointed toward his suitcase. I grabbed the little bottle I had seen the night before. The label was partially torn off, like someone didn't want anyone reading it properly. I turned it in my hand and felt a chill crawl up my spine. Why would my sister tear off a medical label? I opened the bottle and counted the pills. There were barely any left. Then I checked the date. The prescription had been filled weeks ago, which meant either Ethan had been taking these pills daily or someone had been giving him more than he was supposed to get. Either way, it wasn't right. I looked at him carefully. "Ethan, how long have you been feeling sick like this?" He swallowed, his voice tiny. "A long time." A long time. That was enough to make my blood boil. Because my sister had acted like this was a minor issue, Like Ethan was just a little weak. Like she was doing me a favor by leaving him with me, but this wasn't little. This was serious. I carried him into my car, wrapped in a blanket, and drove straight to urgent care. I didn't even bother brushing my hair or changing clothes. I was running on pure adrenaline. The whole drive, Ethan was quiet, too quiet, and that scared me more than anything. Kids who are playful and loud suddenly becoming silent, that's a warning sign. When we finally got into the clinic, the nurse took one look at him and rushed us through faster than normal. They checked his oxygen levels, they checked his heart rate, they checked his breathing. And the doctor's expression slowly changed from professional calm to concern. He asked me, "How long has he been like this?" I hesitated. I couldn't tell him the truth, not yet. Because the truth was I didn't know, and that made me feel guilty, like I should have been paying attention sooner. But how could I? Rachel kept Ethan away from me most of the time. She always had an excuse. He's tired. He's resting. He's not feeling well. Now I realized why. She didn't want anyone to see how bad it had gotten. The doctor asked me again. "Is he seeing a specialist?" I blinked. "A specialist for what?" The doctor stared at me, and I could tell instantly something was wrong, something big. "His chart says he was diagnosed last year," the doctor said slowly. "You didn't know?" My throat tightened. "Diagnosed with what?" The doctor hesitated, then glanced down at Ethan, who was sitting there looking scared. Then he leaned closer to me and lowered his voice. "He has a chronic condition," he said. "His immune system is extremely weak. If he isn't properly monitored, even a simple infection can become life-threatening." My ears started ringing. Life-threatening, and my sister just ran away. I couldn't breathe properly. I felt like my whole body was freezing from the inside out. I turned to Ethan. "Baby, your mom never told me any of this." He looked down at his shoes and whispered something that made my heart stop. "She told me not to tell you." I stared at him. "What?" He nodded slowly, tears forming in his eyes. "She said if I tell you, you'll take me away from her." Oh my God, so she knew. She knew Ethan needed help, but she kept it hidden. Why? Why would any mother hide something like that? Unless she was afraid of being exposed. Afraid someone would question her. Afraid someone would investigate her parenting. Afraid someone would take Ethan away. And that's when a sick feeling crawled into my gut. Rachel wasn't just irresponsible. She was hiding something. After the appointment, they prescribed stronger medicine and recommended follow-up testing at the hospital. They told me to keep Ethan hydrated and monitor him closely. I thanked them, but my mind was somewhere else. Because while everyone else saw Ethan as a patient, I saw him as a clue to something my sister didn't want anyone to uncover. On the way home, Ethan sat in the passenger seat with his blanket pulled up to his chin. The sun was bright outside, but inside my car it felt dark. I kept thinking about the doctor's words. His chart says he was diagnosed last year. Last year. That means Rachel had known for at least 12 months. 12 months of hiding. 12 months of pretending everything was fine. 12 months of letting her son suffer quietly. And now she left him with me, like she was throwing away the last piece of her responsibility. When we got home, Ethan went straight to the couch again, exhausted. I made him soup and tried to get him to eat. He barely touched it. Then, as I cleaned up the kitchen, I heard him mumbling in his sleep. At first, I thought he was dreaming normally, but then I heard words that made my skin crawl. "Don't be mad, please don't be mad. I won't tell, I won't tell." I froze. I walked closer. He was sweating again. His eyebrows were furrowed like he was having a nightmare. Then he whispered something that didn't sound like a dream. It sounded like memory. She said if anyone finds out, we lose everything. I felt my heart slam. Lose everything? What did that mean? What was my sister involved in? I sat beside him and gently touched his shoulder. He jolted awake, eyes wide, terrified like he thought he was in trouble. "It's okay," I whispered quickly. "It's okay. You're safe." He breathed heavily, then wiped his eyes. I leaned closer. "Ethan, who said that? Your mom?" He hesitated. Then he nodded. "And what did she say you couldn't tell anyone?" I asked. His lips trembled. He looked around like the walls might be listening. Then he whispered the words that changed everything. She was taking money from someone. My entire body went still. What do you mean? I asked carefully. He swallowed. She would talk on the phone at night, he said. She said she had to keep it secret. She said it was business. Business. My sister didn't even keep a stable job for more than 6 months. What business could she possibly be doing? And why was she taking money secretly? My mind raced. This wasn't about love. This wasn't about romance. This wasn't about her running away to start a new life. This was about escape. Rachel didn't leave because she wanted freedom. Rachel left because she was afraid. And now, Ethan had just accidentally handed me the first piece of the puzzle. And I could feel it in my bones. If I kept digging, I wasn't just going to find out where she went. I was going to find out what she did. And when I did, she was going to wish she never left her sick child on my doorstep, because she didn't just abandon Ethan. She made me her enemy. That night, I barely slept. Every time Ethan coughed, I jolted awake like someone had slapped me. I kept checking his temperature, his breathing, the way his chest rose and fell. I didn't even realize how tense my body was until my shoulders started aching. And then, around 2:47 a.m., it happened. I heard a strange sound from the living room, like choking mixed with gasping. It wasn't a cough this time. It was panic. I ran out of my room and saw Ethan sitting upright on the couch, his eyes wide, his face pale, his lips slightly bluish. My heart dropped so hard I thought I might faint. "Ethan!" I shouted, rushing toward him. He tried to speak, but no words came out. His small hands were clutching his chest, as if he was trying to pull air into his lungs. I didn't waste time. I grabbed my phone, called 911, and while it rang, I pulled him into my arms and tried to keep him calm. "It's okay, baby. Stay with me. Breathe with me." "Please breathe." But his breathing was shallow and fast, like his body was giving up. When the dispatcher answered, my voice was shaking so badly I could barely speak. "My nephew, he's 10. He can't breathe. Please send someone." Within minutes, the ambulance arrived. The paramedics rushed in like a storm. One of them placed an oxygen mask over Ethan's face while the other checked his pulse. I watched them exchange a look. That look alone made my blood turn cold. They weren't relaxed. They weren't confident. They looked concerned. "Ma'am, we need to take him to the hospital right now," one of them said firmly. I nodded instantly, grabbing my jacket and following them out the door. The ride to the hospital felt like it lasted forever, even though it was probably only 10 minutes. The sirens screamed above us, and Ethan lay on the stretcher with his eyes half open, looking exhausted. I held his hand the entire time. His fingers were freezing. And in that moment, I wasn't thinking about my sister's betrayal. I wasn't thinking about the money Ethan mentioned. I wasn't thinking about revenge. I was thinking one thing and one thing only. Please don't let this child die. When we arrived at the emergency room, the doors burst open and nurses rushed him away immediately. I barely had time to catch my breath before I was standing alone under harsh fluorescent lights. A nurse walked up with a clipboard. "Are you the mother?" she asked. The question hit me like a punch. I hesitated. "No, I'm his aunt." Her expression changed slightly. "Is his mother on the way?" I swallowed. "No," she frowned. "What about his father?" I froze. Ethan's father was never in the picture. Rachel never even liked mentioning him. I didn't even know if his name was on the birth certificate. I don't know," I admitted. The nurse sighed, flipping the page. "We need a legal guardian to sign consent forms if we have to perform any serious procedure." My stomach dropped. "Serious procedure," I repeated, my voice barely above a whisper. She looked at me carefully. "He's in respiratory distress. The doctors are doing tests right now, but if his condition worsens, we may need immediate intervention." I felt like the floor disappeared beneath me. My hands started trembling. I didn't even know if I had the right to save him. I didn't know if the hospital would stop because I wasn't his parent. And that's when the full cruelty of my sister's actions hit me like a train. She didn't just abandon Ethan emotionally. She abandoned him legally. She left him in my care without any paperwork, without any authorization, without any safety net. like she wanted to disappear so completely that even her son would become someone else's problem. A doctor came out about 20 minutes later. He looked tired, serious, and slightly annoyed. "Who's responsible for Ethan Carter?" he asked. I stepped forward quickly. I'm his aunt." "I brought him in." The doctor looked down at his chart. "Do you have guardianship papers?" "No," I said. "His mother, she left him with me." The doctor's jaw tightened. "Left him with you," he repeated. I nodded, my throat burning. "She ran away." The doctor stared at me like he didn't believe people could be that heartless. Then he said something that made my chest tighten. "This child's condition has been neglected. His medication schedule hasn't been followed properly. His immune system is compromised, and he's been exposed to stress and instability." Neglected. That word echoed in my head. Neglected. And suddenly I wasn't just scared, I was furious. Because I remembered Ethan's suitcase. The torn label, the barely there medicine, the fear in his eyes when he said his mom told him not to tell anyone. My sister didn't just fail him. She endangered him. The doctor continued. "We need consent for additional treatment. If we can't reach his legal guardian soon, we may have to involve Child Protective Services." Child Protective Services. That was the moment I realized my sister's fantasy life wasn't going to last. Because no matter where she ran, the hospital records would follow. The state would follow. And if they opened an investigation, they would find out everything. I pulled out my phone immediately and called Rachel again. Straight to voicemail. I called again. Voicemail. I texted her. "Ethan is in the ER. They need your consent. Answer now." Nothing. Minutes passed. Nothing. And in that sterile hospital hallway, while my nephew fought for air behind those doors, I finally understood the truth. Rachel didn't run away for love. Rachel ran away because she didn't want to be held accountable. And I swear, standing there with my hands shaking and my heart breaking, I made a decision. If she wouldn't come back to save her own son, then I would. And after Ethan was safe, I was going to make sure the world knew exactly what kind of mother she really was. The moment the doctor said the words Child Protective Services, my entire body went cold. Not because I was scared of CPS, but because I realized something terrifying. If the hospital was already noticing neglect, then it wasn't just Ethan's health that was falling apart. It was my sister's entire life. And if Rachel had truly run away with her lover like some dramatic romance story, then why would she abandon her son without leaving a single legal document behind? That didn't feel like love. That felt like panic. That felt like someone running because they were being chased. When I finally got home the next day, after Ethan was stabilized and moved into a monitored room, I didn't go to sleep. I didn't even sit down. I went straight into survival mode. I grabbed Ethan's suitcase again and emptied everything on the floor like I was searching for evidence at a crime scene. Because at that point, I wasn't just his aunt. I was his only protection. And Rachel was officially my enemy. At first, it was just clothes, his dinosaur toy, and the pill bottle. But then I found something tucked inside the inner lining of the suitcase. A folded envelope. No name, no note. Just an envelope that looked like it had been shoved in there fast, like someone didn't want it seen. My hands trembled as I opened it. Inside were 3 things: a prepaid debit card, a handwritten list of numbers, and a receipt. The receipt was from a wire transfer service. My eyes locked onto the amount: $18,500. I stopped breathing. Why would my sister, who was always borrowing money, always complaining about bills, have a receipt for nearly $20,000? My first thought was that it had to be a mistake, but it was. The receipt had her name on it, Rachel Carter, and it wasn't just one. Behind it were 2 more, $9,000, $12,400. I sat on the floor staring at them like they were ticking bombs. That was over $40,000 in transfers, and all of them were sent to the same destination. A name I didn't recognize, D. Hawthorne. I whispered it out loud, trying to make it make sense. D. Hawthorne, who the hell was that? My stomach tightened as I looked at the dates. These transfers weren't random. They were planned. One every few weeks, for months. Rachel hadn't run away suddenly. Rachel had been preparing her escape like a criminal, and now I had proof. I grabbed my laptop and typed the name into a search engine. At first, nothing, just random profiles and unrelated results. But when I added the city, because the receipt had a location stamp, I got something else. A corporate listing. My heart started pounding. Dawson Hawthorne. Regional Operations Manager, Halstead Financial Group. I blinked. Halstead Financial Group? That name made my stomach twist because I knew it. Not personally, but because it had been in the news. A major corporation. High-level investments. Big money. Bigger scandals. I remembered seeing something about internal fraud rumors and missing funds, nothing confirmed, just whispers. But now my sister's secret lover had a corporate title attached to his name. This wasn't some random guy she met at a bar. This man had access, power, connections. And the more I looked at his profile picture, the more I realized something even worse. He wasn't just handsome older businessman. He looked dangerous. The kind of man who smiles while ruining lives. The kind of man who wears expensive suits but has dead eyes. And suddenly, Ethan's words came back to me like a warning bell. She was taking money from someone. I stared at the screen, my skin crawling. No, she wasn't taking money. She was moving money, hiding money, like she was part of something bigger. That night, I couldn't stop thinking about it, so I did something I never thought I'd do. I drove to Rachel's apartment. Her old place. I still had a spare key from years ago because she used to lock herself out constantly. I told myself I was only going to grab Ethan's medical documents or important papers, but deep down, I knew I was going there to confirm what my gut already screamed. The apartment was too clean, not tidy, not organized, empty, like someone had wiped their entire life away. No family photos. No framed pictures of Ethan, no laundry, no dishes, no mess, nothing. It was like Rachel had erased herself, and that was when I saw it, a faint outline on the wall where a painting used to hang. I stepped closer, ran my fingers along the paint, and noticed something strange. The wall wasn't flat, it had a slight gap. My heart started racing as I pressed it. And suddenly, a small hidden panel popped open. I froze. Inside was a small metal lockbox. I grabbed it and carried it to the kitchen counter like it was radioactive. I didn't have the key, but the lock was cheap. A screwdriver and a little pressure later, it snapped open. What I found inside made my breath catch in my throat. Stacks of cash, not a little. Not a few hundred, thousands, at least $30,000 in neat bundles, and underneath the cash, a folder. I opened it and felt my entire body go cold. Documents, corporate documents, contracts. Emails printed out, and one document stamped in bold letters. Confidential, internal audit report. I stared at it like it was unreal. What was my sister doing with internal corporate audit files? My hands shook as I flipped through the pages. There were account numbers, transaction records, signatures, and one name that appeared again and again. Dawson Hawthorne, and then Rachel's name. Not as a victim, not as a witness, as a participant. My stomach turned violently. This wasn't a love story. This was a corporate crime story. Rachel hadn't run away with her lover. Rachel ran away with stolen money, and she used her own son as a distraction, a shield, a responsibility she dumped on me so she could disappear without looking back. Then I found the last page. A printed email. The subject line alone made my blood run cold. Once the money clears, we leave, no loose ends. I read it 3 times, hoping I misunderstood, but I didn't. And at the bottom of the email was my sister's reply. Don't worry, Ethan will be handled. Handled. That word hit me like a slap across the face. My hands started trembling so badly I had to sit down, because now I understood the full truth. My sister didn't just abandon Ethan because she was selfish. She abandoned him because he was in the way, because a sick child requires attention, hospital visits, paperwork, records. And Rachel couldn't afford that kind of visibility while running away with stolen corporate money. She didn't leave Ethan behind out of desperation. She left him behind because he was inconvenient. And the worst part, she thought she could get away with it, but she forgot one thing. She left the evidence behind, and she left it with the wrong person. Because I wasn't the type of woman who cries and moves on. I was the type who connects dots. And now that I had those documents, those receipts, and that name, I wasn't just going to find Rachel. I was going to destroy the entire fantasy life she thought she was building. And the moment I walked out of that apartment holding that folder, I knew one thing for sure. Rachel wasn't just running from motherhood anymore. Rachel was running from the law. And I was about to become the reason she got caught. I didn't sleep that night, not because I was scared, but because my mind was racing with one single thought. Rachel thought she could escape. And she thought she could leave her sick child behind like trash. But the thing about people like my sister is, they don't realize that the moment they betray the wrong person, they create their own downfall. And I was done being the nice sister. I sat at my kitchen table with the folder spread out in front of me like a war plan. The cash, the receipts, the internal audit report, the emails. And that one line kept echoing in my head like poison. Ethan will be handled. That was it. That was the moment Rachel stopped being family in my eyes. The next morning, I made one phone call. Not to Rachel, not to her lover, not to the police. I called Halstead Financial Group directly. I didn't ask for customer service. I asked for compliance. I spoke calmly, like I was reporting something small, but my hands were shaking so hard I could barely hold the phone. I have documents tied to Dawson Hawthorne, I said. And I believe your company is being robbed. There was a pause on the other end, then the woman's voice dropped lower. Ma'am, where did you get these documents? I swallowed. My sister left her child with me and ran away, I said. This was hidden in her apartment. Silence. Then she said the words that made my stomach twist. Please do not move those documents. Someone will contact you within the hour. Within 40 minutes, I received a call from a man who introduced himself as an investigator hired by the company. He didn't sound surprised. He sounded relieved, like they'd been searching for this missing piece for a long time. I agreed to meet him at a public location because I wasn't stupid. If Rachel and Dawson were truly involved in corporate theft, I wasn't dealing with normal people anymore. These were people who destroyed lives with paperwork and money. And desperate people do desperate things. At the meeting, the investigator barely blinked as he flipped through the evidence. But when he reached the email thread, his eyes narrowed. This is enough to bring them down, he muttered. I leaned forward. Bring them down how? He looked up at me and said quietly, arrest, termination. Federal charges. The words felt like cold justice sliding into place. But I wasn't satisfied yet, not after what they did to Ethan. I wanted Rachel to feel the shame. I wanted her to feel the humiliation of being exposed, not privately but publicly. Because she didn't just steal money, she stole peace from a child. The investigator told me something that shocked me. Dawson Hawthorne wasn't just an operations manager. He was about to be promoted. In fact, Halstead Financial Group was hosting a major corporate event that weekend, an awards banquet filled with executives, investors, media partners, and important people. Dawson was scheduled to speak. My eyes widened, and suddenly everything clicked. That stage wasn't going to be his victory. That stage was going to be his downfall. The night of the banquet, I didn't attend in person. I didn't need to, because the investigator called me at exactly 8:17 p.m. and I will never forget the sound of his voice. They're here, he said. Both of them? My heart started pounding. Rachel is there too. Yes, he replied. She showed up in a red dress, acting like she owns the room. I closed my eyes and felt a sick wave of anger. Of course she did. Rachel always loved attention, always loved pretending she was innocent and glamorous. The investigator continued, Dawson is about to go on stage. Then I heard it. Through the phone, applause, loud clapping, the sound of a microphone being adjusted, and Dawson's confident voice echoing proudly in the background. Tonight, I'm honored. Then the investigator interrupted him, and everything went silent. He said the security team approached first, then corporate legal. Then two men in suits that weren't from the company. Federal. Rachel stood beside Dawson, smiling like a trophy, until she realized something was wrong. I imagined her face, the slow confusion. The forced smile cracking, the panic rising. The investigator whispered into the phone, "They're showing them the documents." My chest tightened. Then, suddenly, I heard shouting. A woman's voice, sharp, furious, desperate. "Rachel." Even through the phone, I could hear her screaming, "This is a mistake, you can't do this to me." But the truth doesn't care about tantrums. And karma doesn't ask permission. The investigator's voice lowered. "Ma'am, they're placing them in handcuffs." My breath caught. Handcuffs, in front of everyone, in front of the executives. In front of the cameras, in front of the entire world Rachel wanted to impress. And then I heard the final sound, the sound of a crowd murmuring, whispers spreading like wildfire. And then Rachel's voice again, this time not angry, this time terrified. "She did this, Jessica did this." I didn't smile, I didn't laugh. I just sat there quietly holding the phone, letting the moment settle. Because that wasn't revenge, that was justice. When I went to the hospital the next morning, Ethan was sitting up in bed, holding his dinosaur. He looked smaller than ever, but his eyes were brighter. He asked softly, "Did my mom call?" I sat beside him and gently held his hand. "No, sweetheart," I said, "but listen to me, you're safe now, you're not going anywhere." His eyes filled with tears. "Am I staying with you?" I nodded. "Yes, as long as you want." He didn't say another word. He just leaned into me, and for the first time since he arrived at my door, he hugged me like he believed it. And in that moment, I realized something. Rachel didn't just lose her freedom. She lost the only thing that mattered, her son. Because while she was chasing stolen money and fake love, I was the one who stayed. And sometimes, the biggest revenge isn't destroying someone's life. It's proving they were never needed to begin with. If this story made your blood boil, trust me, you're not alone. Because some people don't just betray you, they abandon the innocent and expect to walk away clean. So let me ask you this. What would you do if your own sister left her sick child at your doorstep and disappeared? Would you forgive her, or would you expose her like I did? Drop your opinion in the comments, because I need to know how you would handle this. And if you believe karma always finds the wicked, hit that like button so this story reaches more people. Subscribe for more real-life Reddit revenge stories that will shock you, inspire you, and remind you one thing. Never underestimate the person you tried to break. And trust me, you don't want to miss the next one. Fire.